Hello, everyone, and welcome for joining us at Right from the Start. The COVID-19 pandemic has put financial pressure on businesses, threatening their sustainability agendas. However, aligning profit and purpose and fulfilling responsibilities to the planet and communities of people beyond shareholders may matter more now than ever before. Material choices remain a core decision of any design process, and concern for finite resources have been paramount in the creative process. To gain and retain relevance, designers need to understand, track, and master the emerging trends in material resources and manufacturing processes. Responsible sourcing is more than just a matter of sustainability and reputation. It is one of the first steps to achieving the overriding goal of the next few decades, reaching net zero carbon. In 2019, it was probably the first and only time that a 93-year-old stole the show at the Glastonbury Festival pyramid stage when Sir David Attenborough addressed the audience as the warm-up for Kylie Minogue. After showing scenes from Blue Planet 2, the Wildfire series, credited with inspiring a sea change in attitudes towards plastics pollution, the wildlife broadcaster thanked festival goers and organizers for banning single-use water bottles. "This great festival has gone plastic-free," he said to Cheers. Thank you very much." The assembled crowd for Kylie's set was right to feel virtuous, but how many paused to look down at the spandex in their waistbands, or the polyester in their t-shirts, and the nylon in their shoes? Plastic in what we wear may be less visible than it is in bottles or straws, but it is no less a potential issue. Yet somehow we have woven it so tightly into our throwaway society that we barely notice it, even when it is on our own backs. A plastic-free textile industry would certainly pose a huge challenge for everyone. Plastics are a key issue for the apparel industry. In fact, some of the most common types of fiber are plastic: polyester, nylon, and acrylic, for example. For many high street brands, polyester constitutes more than 50% of their fiber footprint. There is a strong drive for more sustainable fibers with global fashion brands and retailers, setting ambitious sustainable materials targets. So what are the barriers to implementing more sustainable materials? Are there viable alternatives, including recycled fibers and biomaterials? Could the industry operate without plastic fibers? Today, we will talk with a panel of experts from the apparel industry who are making deliberate decisions to reduce synthetics by incorporating man-made cellulosic fibers. So I'd like to start off, if you could introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your company. And we'll start with you, Jordan.
I want to say thank you for having me here. This is a great topic that I always get very excited to be a part of. I'm a founder and creative director of Boyish Jeans. It's a small women's denim brand based here in Los Angeles. We just recently this year branched out into producing more than just jeans, but also t-shirts, sweatshirts, sweatpants, and soft knit dresses. And one of the unique things about our company is that we actually strive to be a zero plastic based company, and everything that we do, that's including even replacing spandex elastane based yarns with natural rubbers, and even progressing into other categories that we've been doing development and innovation on with renewable resources versus oil-based resources.
Thank you, Jordan. And Jaclyn Allen from Guess.
Hi, everyone. My name is Jaclyn Allen. I'm the Director of Sustainability at Guess. I oversee our sustainability program globally and work to embed sustainability throughout the business. I guess we're not focused on expanding a sustainability program separately from the business, but are really working to integrate sustainability into everyone's job description. We put out a sustainability report every 2 years, and we have a report externally validated by a third party because we really value the data and the integrity behind the goals that we disclose for our sustainability program. I'm really excited to be here today, and thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. And Ebru Ozaydin from Artistic Milliners.
Yeah, hi, my name is Ebru Ozaydin. I'm the Senior Vice President for Sales and Marketing, Artistic Millionaires, based in New York. Artistic Millionaires is a vertically integrated denim company based in Karachi, Pakistan. Currently, we've been producing 9 million yards of fabric per month and 2.6 million units of garment, jeans in Karachi. We've been serving globally, from jeanswear brands to sportswear brands. The other thing is we're so proud to be the world's first gold certified, cradle to cradle gold certified fabric maker, and being the first LEED certified and fair trade certified company out from Pakistan.
Great, thank you. And I should also introduce, my name is Tricia Carey, and I'm Director of Global Business Development for Apparel at Lenzing. We manufacture fiber from trees. We make viscose, which we brand as Lenzing Eco Vero. We make modal and lyocell, which we brand as Tencel. And we have 7 manufacturing facilities around the world. And today I'll be leading the discussion with our panelists. And we'll start with you, Ebru. You mentioned how Artistic Milliners is a vertical denim producer. Amazing that you can go right from fiber to yarn, fabric, make the garments. That is clearly a unique setup that you have in the denim industry. How do you look at building the right denim fabric and keeping total garment impacts at a low rate?
Definitely. So being a vertically integrated company brings more responsibility, because you have to start from the farm level to the going all through the fashion level, in fabric making, in garment manufacturing, in washing. So we have a lot of responsibility on our shoulders. Well, I can explain this in 4 different levels. The first one is the platform that we have created. We called it Circular Blue. Under Circular Blue, we've been trying to find out solutions with our partners, the brands, and also our vendors, how we can come up with better solutions by means of raw ingredients and by means of best practices. So here I can tell more about our recycling unit, in-house recycling unit, where we have been using post-consumer waste, pre-consumer waste, and industrial waste. When you're a vertical company, it's easier to produce pre-consumer and industrial waste, and these are all GRS certified. This is the first thing. The other thing is we're trying to implement zero waste design principles, fabrics compliant to Ellen MacArthur guidelines, and also following the certification of Cradle to Cradle Institute. And apart from that, in the garment manufacturing process, we have a LEED certified factory, as I have already mentioned. We have designed a smart laundry, and we gathered all the smart machines, all the eco machinery in washing technology, so that we can serve to our customers in the most, let me say, sustainable way. And implementing Industry 4.0 principles, we use machine automation, automatic dosing, eco-friendly chemicals, and we're trying to recycle and reuse the chemicals in our supply chain.
It's very comprehensive. Amazing, the setup that you have. And there's a lot of information that you share on the internet, and we'll talk a little bit more about transparency later. Jaclyn, for you, you started at Guess, and I feel that you built sustainability from scratch in putting together their raw materials strategy. And you call this evolution change for good. Can you tell us more about how you did that? And also a little bit about how you were recently awarded for the best sustainability report in 2020 by PR News, which a wonderful congratulations on that achievement. Tell us a little bit more about what Guess is doing.
Thanks, Trisha. So Guess is a fashion brand, and we're actually have our 40th anniversary next year. So the company is a legacy brand, we're a heritage brand, and we've been around for a while. So when you talk about sustainability, it's really changing the way that you design, the way you learn, the way you understand materials, and how you incorporate it into your product. So that kind of change just doesn't happen overnight. So one of the first things that we did is, and this goes back to our robust reporting program. Thank you for mentioning our award. We did win Best Sustainability Report by PR News. We also were awarded by the Corporate Register. And we actually got an award from the University of California for our global water footprint as well. And I think it's just a natural consequence of the seriousness that we take in sustainability reporting. As a result, we're getting recognized, which is great. But coming back to what we did. So we first evaluated our overall materials portfolio. This is something that the company really hadn't done before. The company was used to reporting on its financials, but not necessarily on its non-financial reporting, including materials portfolio use in such a robust way. So once we realized, over half of our materials are cotton as a denim company, and then next would be synthetic, and then next is man-made cellulosics. So what we did first understand how much materials and what kind of materials we're using, and then identify the environmentally preferred material alternatives within each category. So for example, for cotton, the environmentally preferred would be organic or recycled. For man-made cellulosics, we have our preferred alternatives to be Tencel, Lyocell, Modal, Ecovero, or Refibra. We put together a guide book on our sustainable material sourcing strategy for our design team. We also brought in speakers. We once, at the beginning of our program, had Trisha come in, really trying to educate our design product development teams on these topic areas, because it needs to become a part of their own conversation and their team decision-making. From that, we set goals to have 20% of our materials portfolio to be sustainable by 2021, and we are on track to meet that goal. And we'll also be setting more ambitious goals for the next decade ahead. And so, yeah, I think that about covers it. Yeah.
That's great. No, Jaclyn, I think you did a wonderful job of, again, bringing it internally within Guess. That buy-in has to happen, not just at the top, but through everyone working on it, everyone owning it. And it's wonderful to see also the recognition that you had from outside, just the denim industry within the sustainability space. So again, congratulations on that. And Jordan, for you, your brand Boyish states the only impact we'll leave on the planet is good jeans. What is your philosophy on raw materials?
Raw materials was an interesting path in our business, because we realized that raw materials are actually the biggest impact you can make with denim specifically. I think some of the reports I'd seen out there stated that about 60% of the impact of a jean is coming from the actual materials and fabric specifically. And then, 30% from the laundry, 10% from the trims and the pocketing and the other small materials that are added onto it. And the uniqueness to me was like, all right, it doesn't matter how much water you save in the laundry side, and because there's still this huge chunk of impact that you need to be making to be able to reduce. And it just kind of seemed to me like everyone was celebrating mediocrity. And mediocrity to me felt like people that are doing 5% good should then be praised so much just for doing 5%. I do believe in every step is a small step towards change. However, I think right now these bigger companies are starting to realize that if they just do something really small, that they can then be, looked at differently, and then they don't have to make that much financial impact on actually doing something that's going to make impact. And so that's where we kind of adapted this sort of philosophy of like, all right, let's make sure that we don't shift into that network of fashion becoming 60% synthetic materials that are polyester, polyamide, like you mentioned before, that everyone's wearing jeans that are, conventional cotton and, elastane mixed with a heavy amount of polyester that's also thinner than the traditional garment, which makes it stretchier, which also therefore makes it fall apart sooner. So therefore, we've pretty much done what we've done with the rest of the industries, which is we've taken the single-use coffee cup and applied it to fashion and made people feel like fashion has now become something that is so unvaluable that you can wear it one time and throw it away and who cares if it falls apart. So we wanted to take that and flip it around. We wanted to be able to use renewable resources, plant-based resources that's plastic free. And not only that, is a heavier garment that's going to hold up its sort of weight. And we actually looked back at how jeans were made before all this plastic started entering it, because before, the late 90s, all the jeans were pretty much just 100% natural materials. So we wanted to just adapt that into every philosophy. So we started realizing which specific fibers had the best metrics based on life cycle assessment reports that were done by people that were professionals in their fields, third-party analysis. And that's how we ended up with lensing and using a lot of lensing materials, especially Tencel, because we realized that this sort of circular fiber that comes from plants reuses chemicals and waters, comes out natural, and has all these extra benefits. And at the end of the day, it's also even stronger and softer than a traditional cotton. We realized, all right, you not only have to make something more sustainable, but you can actually make the quality better. And that to me is a win-win scenario versus trying to make something cheap just to make more money because you're not going to sell it all and people are just going to come back and buy something again in a month. That is a lose, 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 lose scenario to us. So we wanted to just kind of adapt a different formality to it, and then especially educate our consumers and everybody, whether they buy our products or not, on why we do this, which is why we even just recently launched our fiber guidelines on our website to help teach people this, because I get asked this a lot, and help give them information so that they can go out there and help judge other companies and their other favorite products, and maybe even email their favorite companies and ask them why they're not using these specific materials, or why they're not proving what they're doing by using LCA reports, or why they're not actually giving us accurate data about how they somehow save 99% water, but they're using 98% conventional cotton. So.
Right. No, Jordan, I think you do so much to educate the consumer, and as a small company, you've taken on so much to educate. And I always admire too that you're about having feet on the ground, whether it's in a cotton field or going through the forest. Earlier this year, it was a pleasure to host you at our headquarters in Austria, because you really wanted to learn how we transform trees into fiber. So thank you for your commitment around that. Let's talk a little bit about transparency, because all of this, when you talk about materials and which selection of materials you have, transparency comes into play, and the questions that we get asked from consumers. We're all opening our doors, tracking from field to garment, telling this story, but how much transparency is too much? And do you feel that consumers will really pay for this? Do they value it? Jaclyn, what do you feel for guests? What's your take?
I think transparency is important to many consumers. They want to know where their products are being made, who's making them, how they're being treated, what are the environmental standards of the factories, and the environmentally preferred materials that we're using. I think that when you think about just paying for transparency, that's a little bit, I'd say, transactional, and we like to think of it more in a holistic sense. So one thing that we're really proud of is we're part of the Ellen MacArthur Foundation's Jean Redesign Program. What I really love about this program is it's an industry group that has come together to create a higher standard, a more holistic, integrated standard for what sustainable denim looks like. Transparency is a part of it, but so is materials health, so is recyclability, and various durability. So when taken together, you have a product that not only is more transparent, but uses higher quality materials that can be used longer and that can be recycled, right? So when you take it all together in that holistic sense, you're creating so much more value for the customer. And maybe it might cost a little bit more, but they'll wear that denim so much longer. And then they know that it will have multiple lives after they purchase. So that's where we see transparency coming into play in a stronger sense for our customer, is when it's paired with an entire value proposition for the whole product for our customer. And so we're part of that group, and we're having our first jeans redesign launch next spring in 2021. We're also looking to apply those principles to non-denim as well, and we'll be increasing that holistic approach throughout our portfolio in years ahead.
That's great. Yeah, I mean, the Ellen MacArthur Foundation, they've done an incredible job to bring the industry together and to kind of set some of those guidelines to get people to think. Lenzing is also a part of the jeans redesign. And actually, Jordan, I know you are as well. What is your perspective on transparency and how much to communicate with consumers, and do they value it?
Yeah, I get asked a lot, am I too transparent? Does that affect your business? Do you feel like you're giving away all your secrets? And it's tough. You know, I oftentimes see people just a couple months right after I just launched something, talked about it, doing the same thing, and just, it's like one thing after the next. But it doesn't make me feel like, oh man, they're copying me. It makes me feel like, oh, I'm inspiring other people to also make change. And that's how we do it, is we have to inspire each other. And if we don't inspire each other, then there's no point in us even trying, you know, because once again, we just end up like the big players that are all just, you know, putting up these curtains and just giving you a show in front of the curtains. But really behind that curtains is the other 95% of the damage that they're doing. And that's what's tough, is because at the end of the day, when people use big numbers too, like these big companies, like, oh, we're going to make, you know, 100,000 jeans or 1 million jeans that are going to be, you know, with organic cotton. They don't realize that you're making 1 billion jeans a year, you know, or whatever number that these people do, you know, especially across all the garments. And that's something that transparency helps break down, because, you know, when you tell people where you're making your products, how you're making them, using actual physical facts that exist based on not something you put together the math, but somewhere where at a professional company that this is what they do, companies that are certifying, you know, and making sure that the life cycle assessments are correct, and they're using newer and current data. They're part of companies such as the Sustainable Apparel Coalition, the Textile Exchange, you know, all these other companies that are helping band things together to put this information together to make things better. These are the companies that are truly transparent, because these are the companies that actually care about true facts based on true metrics. And they don't just give you some bullshit, excuse my language, marketing story that is only built off of just trying to get people to think that you're doing something well, so they don't stop buying your products. But that's where the real power comes from, because with the transparency, it gives the power to the consumers. The consumers then do not spend their money on these bigger companies, you know, because they forget that when they don't buy that, then the big companies now have to make a change. They actually have to spend money, because now the big companies are looking at it as, we have to invest to divert losing customers. Where before they're like, we have the customers, who cares about the customers? Let's just make it look like we're actually doing something, which these are common business practices, because people forget, it doesn't matter how many short showers or riding a bike or electric car or whatever you do at home, it doesn't matter. There are great things to do, but at the end of the day, 71% of the, you know, carbon emissions in the world come from the top 100 energy companies in the world. And these sort of specifics are crazy, because you think about it, you're like, I'm over here just trying to do as much as I can, but you're still spending money and supporting all these companies that are out there destroying the world, even though they're telling you that they may be doing something small. And that's where the true math comes in. And math, when you put it together correctly, it just doesn't lie.
Right. No, well stated, Jordan. And you mentioned TE and also the Higg Index, because it's about having those metrics. Which other companies would you recommend that people look into?
You know, there's a lot of different ones. Obviously, those are the two that I've tend to look at the most. You know, there's LCAs that you can get from platforms. I think it's, there's a specific software, I think, called Gabby, I think is what it's called. And they have a whole array of LCAs that you can use. You can band together with different transparency agencies, which can also help you band together. We specifically use Retraced, but I know that there's a lot of them coming out. I know FiberTrace is going to be a big one, that they're coming out with some sort of tracing that can be scanned, which is very unique and interesting, based off of organic material that they can scan within the fibers. And you know, the list, there's a lot of them. It's hard to think about all of them right now, because I don't use maybe a lot of them, but I definitely know that the Higgs Index is extremely important because it helps you guide fibers based on all this information from life cycle assessments that have been done by scientific research.
Right, definitely. And they even had an updated release in August. So if anyone has looked at HIG, make sure you go back. They did change the scorecard a little bit. So, Ebru, what is your take on transparency and the consumer and how that relates back to value? Where do you see that as a denim mill and garment maker?
I think Jordan has extremely well articulated, and I'll be kind of echoing his philosophy and his approach through business to business level. So currently we're dealing with a very conscious, very knowledgeable, very smart end consumer. So thanks to social media, clearly. And then they're asking more questions, and they want to know about more about the goods that they are paying for. So furthermore, post-COVID, it has started, before the COVID, but after the pandemic, now there's an increasing scrutiny about the goods, how they are sourced, how they are manufactured, and who they are produced by. So this is extremely important. So we have to look at it from two perspectives. One of the thing is planet perspective. The other one is the human perspective. So currently we have evolved from a storytelling to story proving era. That's why data is so important. So data is definitely an essential part of transparency. And then transparency is all about trust. It's a mutual trust. The end consumer is going to trust me, and then I'm going to trust him or her. So if they know where their products are produced, how they are produced, from which farm, from which mill, from which garment manufacturing company, and we can also make everything publicly visible, then it's going to be opening a gateway to push everybody in the supply chain to share all the realities in the manufacturing. And then it will be also giving us an opportunity to get the feedback from the consumer and then improve ourselves, maybe prioritize the investments, or how we're going to be improving ourselves when it comes to doing things in a better way.
Great, very well said. Now, when we talk about the end use, which ties in with a lot of what you were also mentioning with transparency, in design, we have to consider not only the beginning, but also the end use. What are you doing to address, reduce, reuse, recycle, the hierarchy that we have right now, and specifically with end of use regarding circularity? Jordan, you're also a part of the Ellen MacArthur redesign. What are you doing to address end use?
Yeah, I have a little bit different of a perspective than I think what the current redesign project is working on, because when I had first spoken with them a few years ago when they're putting the guidelines together, I was still kind of in the works of figuring out how to really make it as much circular as I can. So I adapted into cellulosic materials is what we focus on, because I love working with refibra, and the great thing about that is that we can circulate waste scraps that are cellulosic in its content, so waste cotton scraps, and turn it into something that's actually better, which is what in the industry we call upcycling. And that's the concept of being able to take something that would be considered trash and making it actually a better product, versus what traditionally happens is either recycling, which is just a can to a can, or even downcycling, which is taking a lot of this like scrap cotton that could be used to be made into new garments, actually putting it into like insulating fodding or anything like that you would use in some sort of other way that isn't as useful. And that's where the renewable resources come into play, because the best thing about things like using cellulosic man-made fibers is going to be blending it with fibers like organic cotton. And then at the end of the day, you have a very strong garment that's going to be able to be worn for a while. And then if you do it right and you blend these beautiful fibers with non-toxic dyeing materials and finishing materials along the supply chain, then you can also have a great garment that isn't going to be toxic, and you could be turning it into something again in its past or in its future life. So this means, for instance, when you put spandex or elastane or polyurethane, whatever you want to call it, into garments, you actually, the more you put into it, the more difficult it is to then circulate this product. And so what we focus on is this is what we had worked with on the redesign project, is 2% or less. And this is the reason, because technology currently right now, such as companies like, you know, around the world, I know there's maybe about 3 or 4 of them that are taking cotton mixed with synthetic materials, and they're able to separate these synthetic materials through a wet recycling process. And they can only do pretty much up to 2% of the contamination is what it's considered at that point. And, you know, with us, actually, probably 60% of our jeans, if not maybe even 70% of our jeans, doesn't even have a single elastane-based yarn, which obviously I know in the format of financials, that maybe that reduces the amount of jeans that we sell, but it also increases the capability of our jeans to last longer and to be able to make them recyclable. We're actually even able to recycle all of our scraps from all that 70% of the jeans that we're making, because at least about 15% of fabric is actually thrown away after you're just done cutting it, which means you make the fabric, you cut it, and you throw it away. 15% of it. So that's already an extremely inefficient industry in itself, which is the reason why banding together and producing, for instance, like our t-shirts and our sweatshirts that are made with refibra and also organic cotton, and then we save those scraps and we actually mechanically recycle them back into our t-shirts and sweatshirts when we remake them. And we even save other materials, for instance, like we piece dye our black versus garment dye in our other ones. And we actually save the black and then we produce a heather-based yarn out of it. So the concept is thinking less about making garments or making fabric, but thinking about designing yarns that are circular, that are strong and capable of being able to last through different materials. So that means you can produce yarns that you can use for shirts, pants, sweatshirts and stuff like that. So there's a lot of capability to make it versatile, which is where circularity really comes into, because multiple uses create a longer lasting life.
Definitely longer lasting quality garments. And Ebru, we've talked about biodegradability and compostability quite a few times together, but what is Artistic Milliners doing to address end of use of garments that you're producing?
Well, definitely the initial design is affecting the whole life cycle of the product when it comes to, you know, when it comes to monitoring the effect on the planet and also on the people. So for a denim mill like us, there are 2 things. First of all, what we can do in-house, we're procuring BCI cotton, organic cotton, and currently we're working on our cotton initiative called Millionaire Cotton Initiative. We're trying to find out how we can really make this better in our own supply chain with maybe even better standards, including the humanitarian part of the thing. The second thing is, as I have already mentioned, recycling the fibers, especially in-house. That's giving you a full control of all the parameters that you can also share with your supply chain. The third one is, of course, procuring upcycled, recycled, and regenerative fibers. And you have already known in our collection, in our full fabric pool, we've been using almost more than 40% of Tencel in different blends. And then we're also proud, lately we have launched a brand new collection with Refibra, which is also, which we've been also embedding an 80% water saving technology. So that is giving us a lot of opportunity to approach the customer, approach the brands before even they've been thinking. We've been something in our hands and making their life easy for participating in the circular fabric, a circular, let's say, product design.
Right. No, that's great. You really run the gamut of different materials. And again, I think this is the variety that we don't have to feel that designers are locked into one way of designing or one set of materials. And for you, Jaclyn, how is Guess looking at end of use? And you're also in a unique position that you have your own retail stores. How are you managing things at Guess?
Sure. So in reuse, recycle. There's a few things we're doing. One, as mentioned, we have the jeans redesign program where we're looking at how we design products to be made for disassembly and recyclability, which is a huge new learning curve for our company in terms of even just the hardware and the buttons and the zippers. So that's on the product side. In terms of our retail stores, once the product's out there, how do you get the product back for recycling? These are systems that are just being developed. And I think that's probably one of the most difficult challenges our industry faces is getting the product back. We launched a program called Resourced in our retail stores where our customers can take back not only Guess product, but any product. And we have a partnership where we recycle those products for reuse and recycling. And we are expanding that program in Europe and other countries as well. And we're also looking into new partnerships to be able to more directly take that loop back and recycle, reuse, and resell. Separately, we also have launched our Guess Vintage collection. We started just in Los Angeles last year. This year, we took it online. And the idea of vintage is secondhand, which is really an exciting, I think, industry piece as well, because it reduces the overall environmental footprint of a product. And so we're looking into how do we expand that part of our business as well, reducing our reliance on virgin materials to be able to get more use and wearability out of the products we already have.
Those are some great initiatives. I like the vintage too. You know, again, back to building garments that last, classic. Let's get away from being so season oriented. And those are really wonderful examples. Within the industry, we've been talking more about the UN Sustainable Development Goals. They were established in 2015, and they are a set of 17 goals as a framework for all companies to utilize. And it addresses both the environmental side as well as the social side, which many of you have addressed in this discussion. It also, helps to carry through some of these conversations we're having around raw materials. How does your company integrate and look at the SDGs? Ebru, I know that you have extensively looked at every single SDG with Artistic Milliners. Can you tell us a little bit more about what you've done?
Absolutely. If I'm going to be talking about the whole, it's going to take hours and hours, but I'll try to only focus on 3 of them. Well, first of all, I want to say Sustainable Development Goals, which is a part of UN 2030 agenda. It's currently the world's best plan. And then following these SDGs, we're trying to build a roadmap, and then we're trying to prioritize the areas where we have to improve. So all these SDGs, they definitely serve and has a direct impact on circularity, on zero waste design, recycled fibers, water-saving wet processes, and also green chemistry. I'm not even talking about the humanitarian part because it will come up with SDG number 5. So currently, I think all of us in the industry, we've been taking SDG 12, which is responsible consumption and production, as number 1 SDG, because it is a direct bond with circular economy, with circularity. And we're following SDG 12, we're chasing after the new alternative fibers and ingredients. It's not just the fibers, but also the chemistry, and also natural resource saving systems to create a sustainable and responsible production pattern. That's why apart from the fibers that we have in next gen fibers we've been using in the production pattern, there are also some new technologies, wet processing technologies. We're trying to save a lot of water in the whole. It's not just the fabric production, but also 360 garment production. And of course, that is also related very much with SDG number 6, which is clean water and sanitation. It also covers the worker well-being area. And then last but not least, the area that I want to mention is SDG number 6, which is gender equality. Sorry, SDG number 5, which is gender equality, women empowerment, which is also extremely important for us because in 2019, last year, our leadership has been awarded by UN, United Nations Global Compact, as one of the SDG pioneer, gender equality and decent work.
Wonderful. Congratulations for that. And the work that Artistic Milliners is doing with the United Nations with Global Compact is really commendable and sets the leadership for the denim industry. And Jaclyn, at Guess, how are you integrating the SDGs?
Yeah, so I think primary SDGs specifically as it relates to materials and products is SDG 12, responsible consumption. And then we really see that as going hand in hand with SDG 13, climate action. Guess actually just recently submitted our science-based targets to the Science-Based Targets Initiative. We're also members of the UN Fashion Charter on Climate Change, which basically requires not only ambitious goals to reduce our scope 1 and 2 emissions, but also scope 3, which is our supply chain, our value chain, product and materials. A huge part of our approach to reducing our scope 3 emissions is through materials, responsible material sourcing, and partnering with suppliers that also have ambitious climate goals. You know, Lenzing also has science-based targets goals. So this will be critical to reducing our overall footprint in our supply chain as well by increasing the amount of recycled materials that we use, whether through recycled cotton or recycled, recycled cotton scraps. With Refibra, we're also reducing our overall footprint and our carbon emissions related to scope 3, and as well as durability. So if we commit to increasing the longevity of our products, making sure that the wear is longer, that reduces our carbon footprint as well. So they all go hand in hand. I think right now everyone's focus is on carbon and climate, but that it goes hand in hand with responsible material sourcing, less waste, better for biodiversity, et cetera.
That's great. Yeah, no, the Science-Based Target Initiative is really wonderful to set that measurement. It's 1,027 companies that are part of Science-Based Targets. And I have to give a little plug because I am proud that Lenzing is the only fiber company with approved Science-Based Targets. So again, congratulations to you, Jaclyn, for taking the charge on that. Jordan, how is Boyish using the SDGs?
We don't. I already doing most of those things before they even came up with the SDGs. So yeah. It's like, it wasn't really something that we needed to look at. I mean, the first one's no poverty. We work with, we're a partner in 1% for the Planet. So we donate to several different industries or nonprofits. For instance, I guess goal 1, 2, and yeah, 1 and 2 definitely go into something we have called Solar Sister that we work with, and they go out to rural villages in Africa and help bring solar energy into villages that don't have electricity at all. They're currently using charcoal and things like that. They're extremely bad. They have awful environments. And then what ends up happening is usually coal generated power comes into these villages. So this is a way to kind of prevent that from happening. Quality education is something that we do through our programs and through our Instagram, especially, where we're always constantly, we use it as a platform to help educate others on important things that come from, voting to politics to, impact and to actually going out there and volunteering, how to volunteer, how to get into the community to help yourself. Gender equality is definitely something that we've been a lot about. We always do the women's March every year. We get together, we help, we put together all this materials, everyone can make their signs. We go out, we work with several different organizations such as Generation Her, where we help do volunteer programs by helping teen moms and things like that. Clean water and sanitation is obviously something that just is a normal thing for us with Denim, and working with people that are through different organizations got certified with their chemicals. We're also an OEcoTex certified brand. Our entire supply chain is OEcoTex certified. And actually, back when you were asking me earlier about other agencies to help look at for more information, I forgot that actually Oecotex has a great thing called the Eco Passport that helps you identify companies in the world that are already certified, that already have these things, and they can help connect you to them. I can keep going, but I think one of the ones I really wanted to focus on was industry innovation and infrastructure, which is the one thing that I think prevents a lot of companies from really making true change. Is true innovation is going to take investment that is outside of just profitability. And that's the thing, is that people have to understand that success is measured in different formats, just as value is as well. If people just automatically just started to say that, hey, look, elephant ivory is not valuable, it's worthless, then poachers would not poach elephants anymore, because there would be no market for it. For such things as, if people just said that, look, I'm not going to buy plastic-based clothes because they're not valuable. It's trash. It's a plastic bag. The same thing with recycled plastic fashion. Why would I then want to take something that was once Tupperware and put it on my body? I'm like, and it's the same mentality, because that's what people are being. They're being fooled right now, and that's why these SDGs had to be in place, because they realize that the primary majority of all these companies are fooling our common folk, and that there's still 700 plus million people that live in poverty, that die because they don't, of not having clean water, and not having, dying of starvation and things like that. Whereas in other places in the world, people are just eating as much as they want and throwing it all away. First of all, in the first step, they shouldn't even be eating that much. And this is the mentality that the SDGs are built to help open doors for people in their minds to expand, to figure out and say, hey, look, this doesn't seem right. If this is the information that's out there, then I need to figure out how to adjust my mentality. How can I take place in this? And that's always going to come back to which companies you support and what they are doing to help make the world a better place.
For sure, definitely. So wonderful to hear about what you're working on. And then just in closing, a couple of comments then that you each might have about the future, and how raw materials, getting it right from the start, is crucial for this decade of action. Jaclyn, what are some of your closing thoughts?
Yeah, so I think one of the exciting things I see more at an industry level is on reporting. And I know it's, it's not the most sexy topic, but in terms of, I think one of the biggest challenges we've had with sustainability is the validity, the comparability of the sustainable data and material sourcing numbers that you see, because people are picking and choosing what they communicate without having it validated, without the context. And then that makes it meaningless and adds to the confusion. So one thing that I'm really excited about, I guess I'm actually a member of the Sector Advisory Group for SASB, which is the Sustainable Accounting Standard Board. And they have sector-specific requirements for each industry on what they see as most relevant from a financial perspective to industry. And in the financial, for fashion, responsible material sourcing is a requirement. And they're not a huge amount of requirements. It's a smaller group of requirements that you have to disclose. But the idea is that companies will start to treat these requirements as strongly as they treat their financial disclosure. And the more that happens, the more alignment, standardization, competition that can occur with sustainable material sourcing and the validation of that material sourcing. So that gives me a lot of hope for where the industry is going, because SASB's and that idea of standardized reporting is really gaining a lot of momentum right now. Everyone's realizing that sustainability actually impacts the bottom line of a company beyond just the product, but the overall company from a risk perspective, a revenue perspective. So I think that aside from the product, but reporting really gives us a lot of hope. And that's something that, again, we've been a little bit more conservative in what our goals are, but we have the data to back it up. And we're excited to continue to grow that, because by the end of the decade, we see that sustainable material sourcing won't become even a topic anymore. It will be the requirement, And then there will be a whole new generation of new fibers like biotech, fibers or Refibra fibers that are going to be the new sustainable materials. And so we're excited about that.
For sure. It'll just be a part of the norm and not anything extra. Jordan, for you, what are your thoughts about the future and our decade of action?
The first thing when it comes to sustainability is you can never be 100% sustainable. It's just not a number that's achievable. It's a constant evolving metric, which is obviously what Jaclyn was just talking about. There's always something new coming out, and that's evolution. And the first step of sustainability, I always like to compare it to Buddhism, and it's in sort of format that life is suffering, and the first step of suffering is your selfishness, which ultimately is an adaptation of understanding your place in change. And that's the thing, is that you can't fix something if you don't identify the problem. It doesn't work the other way around. You can't put a problem to something you already have a fix for, which is what a lot of people are doing right now in sustainability. And it really comes down to the fact that you can't be afraid of making mistakes, because even when you are sustainable, you're going to choose things that somebody told you that was sustainable without really doing the research, because it's a lot of work. It's a lot, and you're already spending more money. And so you have to be willing to accept that, which means keeping an open mind and asking lots of questions, and always proceeding to the mentality that you could be doing something better, but don't be stressed, because you don't have to feel like you always have to be doing something. It's just a matter of accepting, adapting, being a good human being, which is ultimately learning what's happening in the world and learning where your place is in that and how you can contribute and help others.
That's great. Thank you. And Ebru, we'll close with you.
Well, definitely sustainability is not a destination, it was a long journey. And as Jordan has already mentioned, yes, sometimes we've been doing mistakes. Sometimes, we really have to find new solutions. And the thing is, it is something that we have to educate ourselves, the mills, the factories, and even we have to also help the brands, and the brands also have to help the end consumer to educate themselves. That's why all these, social media, blogs, whatever we've been doing, I don't know, but whatever we've been doing, it's so important. But specifically when it comes to fibers, since natural fibers, they're not inexhaustible, so the solution is definitely recycled, upcycled, regenerated fibers. And then here, I think biomimicry will be helping us. And that definitely brings us to the nature, because nature is the best mentor that we can learn from. And again, I think we're going to be finding the solution in nature. That is what I want to say.
Wonderful. Thank you. And thank you, Ebru, Jordan, and Jaclyn for this conversation today. It was always very interesting. And you guys are all thought leaders within your space. And I just want to emphasize it's about having the right materials from the start, to ask questions, and to look at how we can utilize the SDGs in order to build back better in our decade of action. So thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you, Tricia.